wearing
All
clothes, and
right.
if it looks like it is, it's part of
Hello,
their
my fellow
design.
Decepticons and rebellious Autobots, and any other travelers of the internet. Optimus is here with me, and today we are going to be doing a reaction video, and we are in avatars appropriate to the video that we're watching.
I think these are both of our favorite Pokemons.
Yes, they are. Although I do like shiny better. This cannot turn shiny though.
Shiny Zygarde is awesome.
Yes. Okay, and the video we are watching today is an explanation of SCP-5254. Gotta catch 'em all.
A grisly incident occurs inside the popular storefront of Nintendo World at Rockefeller Center, New York. It happens during the announcement event of a brand new Pokemon game, the highly anticipated sequel to the classic spin-off game Pokemon Conquest.
Oh, this was years
Poke-fans
ago.
from all over the world have shown up in order to show their love for the collectible monster franchise. But in the mere moments before the trailer could be shown, a rotten stench fills the air. A wafting cloud of poison gas sweeps low through the crowd, and the effects are immediately hazardous. A pair of young children in matching purple sweaters, marked with a distinctive symbol seen on a poison-type Pokemon, begin coughing and wheezing. These are not victims of the poison gas,
really?
but rather its inexplicable source. As the gas spreads through the store, the children begin to turn a bright shade of purple, and their skin becomes craggy and porous. Even more alarming is the fact that the siblings
I've watched this
began
video
to fuse
before, but
together,
it's been a long
limbs
time,
retracting
so...
into their bodies, as the larger of the two becomes little more than an enormous floating face, with the younger as an attached growth. The smog is so thick at this point that few are able to see that the two children now bear an uncanny resemblance to Pokemon number 110, Wheezing. The gas has been noticed by most of the adults in the room, and a panic has caused the crowd to begin
At
trampling
this
each
point
other
it was
for the
noticed?
exit. In the midst of the confusion, several people step on the transmuted children, causing them to cry out in pain, and in a state of distress, they unleash the lethal Pokemon move known as Explosion. From the outside, a sudden blast can be seen roaring through the interior of the store. The windows shatter immediately, and a heavily damaged life-size statue of the Nintendo character Donkey Kong comes sailing out into the street, where it lands roughly in the midst of New York traffic.
I don't know what's so funny about that.
To Nintendo World immediately, expecting
Just
that some
Donkey
sort of bomb
Kong.
has gone off. There's no way they could have predicted what horrors awaited them at the scene. The unwilling Wheezing is not the only transformed human within the event.
I think the main
and
reason you
indeed,
wanted to watch
some
this video
far
was
more
because of the
aggressive
Garchomp.
and dangerous monsters have been made there.
I love Garchomp.
A cosplayer in a onesie that had been designed to resemble Pokemon number 448, Lucario, has awakened her defensive sensory abilities on instinct to avoid the damage. But this protective power has come at the cost of her humanity.
Like, weird looking.
Blue fur erupts
I
and
know,
tufts from
that's
her
kind of the
skin.
whole- that's kind of the whole
Face
point.
elongates
Better now.
into a distorted canine
Okay, it's
muzzle.
looking better now.
Panic spreads across the morphing face of the cosplayer, and as she tries to get clear of the chaos, her flailing limbs send other members of the fleeing crowd flying. The genetic alteration that gave her limbs and face a Lucario-like appearance have apparently changed her muscles to deliver spring-loaded blows on instinct. Another fan finds that his hoodie, which features the face of Pokemon number 94, Gengar, had bound itself to him and caused his body to be partially insubstantial, as if it were made out of gas. He could barely control the direction his body traveled in as the wind pushed him out of the store. Several police cars arrive at Nintendo World and see the floating Pokefan rising like a ghost above the streets. He has become like a human balloon, and there is no apparent way to get him down. One of the officers calls for a helicopter to arrive, and the rest proceed towards the source of the blast. "Monster!" scream some of the fleeing survivors, pointing at the Lucario cosplayer. She raises her hands defensively.
Lucario with 5
but
fingers
this has
looks
the
weird.
side effect of causing the bioluminescent cells that are now part of her paw hands to glow. The glare from this sudden reaction draws the guns of the cops, who aim for the cosplayer, unsure of what weapon she's carrying. "Stay where you are! Drop your weapon!" the officers shout. "Help me, please!" The Lucario cosplayer drops to her knees, reducing her threat level. From out of the smoke of the store come several more transmuted humans, most of them injured by the explosion. There was a 3-legged being covered in pitch-black fur and sores weeping with yellow pus. Pokemon number 197, Umbreon, but its front leg was still a human arm. There was a bald
Oh,
blue
that's
man
so
covered in a
cursed.
still-growing turtle shell, a middle-aged Pokemon number 7, Squirtle. Smashing its way through the solid cement was a predator that was sleek in body, yet uncanny in movement.
There he
Pokemon
is.
number 445, Garchomp, a scaled humanoid monster that dragged its belly on the ground. The police were horrified as this legion of monsters crawled out into the street. Decades of media and conditioning led the cops to the only solution their currently broken minds could process. They opened fire with their firearms and screamed like babies.
You can definitely
at the
tell this
scary
took place in
creatures.
America.
Acting on instinct, the Lucario cosplayer moved at incredible speeds and dodged several bullets. She ran into a nearby alleyway and vanished from view. The other monsters were less lucky. Umbreon took a few bullets and dropped, while the Squirtle retreated into his shell as the bullets bounced off of the back of it. The Garchomp withstood a bit of weapons fire.
It's
but
very
then
funny to
burrowed into
me
the
that
street
it
to escape.
just the Umbreon
It
just
soon found
straight up
itself in a totally
dies.
empty subway tunnel and made a mad dash for its escape from the authorities. Back above ground, the cops searched vigilantly for more of the creatures. As the helicopter sailed in, the floating Gengar drifted towards a tall building, phasing in through an open window. Once inside, the humanoid ghost Pokemon found itself much more comfortable in the shadows. The various employees of the office floor didn't feel the same, and were stricken with fear as they observed Pokemon number 94 turn invisible. His enlarged, grinning face disappearing, as if he were the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland. When firefighters started to mitigate damage at the scene, it became clear that at least 3 monsters were still on the loose. For now, the transformation instances were contained to the destroyed storefront of Nintendo World in Rockefeller Center. But if affected individuals were contagious, then the situation could go from bad to worse at an alarming rate. The police established a perimeter and used their private radio to put out an alert to every officer in New York that there were apparently monsters walking the earth. Descriptions of the roaming Pokemon that were still at large were given, and this prompted a lengthy discussion over the radio about the logic of Pokemon existing in the real world. Several of the senior officers didn't have any knowledge of the Pokemon franchise and had significant difficulty being brought up to speed on the events of the day. Despite the initial snafu in communication, the extraordinary details of the case became known to every available officer. There were 3 suspects: Pokemon number 448, Lucario, Pokemon number 94, Gengar, and Pokemon number 445, Garchomp. And the mission objective was to catch them all.
Garchomp. There's nothing mutated about
With his
it.
invisibility and ghost-like material properties, Gengar had no difficulty hiding out in the office building. Though a brief
You can
look
still
in
tell
one of
that
the
that was a
bathrooms
human
showed
at
him
some
that
point.
Invisibility was the best option for
the
other
Garchomp?
reasons.
No,
as
the
his face
Gengar.
and body had
Yeah, the
deformed to the
Gengar,
point
yeah,
that his
not
head
the
and torso
Garchomp.
had been fused together. Additionally, spined growths of cartilage had begun to line his back, and they were starting to itch terribly. His eyes had enlarged and were now completely bloodshot red with dilated pupils. It would be a miracle if anyone recognized him as a human being in the shape he was in. His mind could hardly cope with the change and created a false narrative to spare his sanity. I'm dead. That's it. I died in that explosion and turned into a ghost like Gengar.
That meme?
It wasn't the most convincing or uplifting lie to believe, but it was enough to keep him from the risk of exposing his nightmarish form to other human beings.
Does Gengar
He
have
became
eyebrows?
determined to haunt the office building as subtle
Gengar
as
has
he
like
could,
little things on
until
his
things
eyes,
made
but he
sense
has
again,
eyebrows.
even if they never did. Gengar turned invisible again and faded into a non-existent presence within the building. He drifted unseen from workspace to workspace, unaware that his transformation was a curse that could be passed on. There were many office workers with Pokemon desk toys, and while the effects wouldn't be immediate, a dull ache began to set in across the office floors as bodies
I
started
didn't
to
remember
prepare
this part.
themselves for transformation. Meanwhile, on the mean streets of New York, Lucario ran as fast as she could, quickly realizing that her muscles had become capable of great strides and leaps. She was able to scale brick walls and leap between rooftops like a trained parkour expert, and the exhilaration of such physical feats almost counterbalanced the sheer, mind-numbing terror of losing her original body to the Pokemon transformation. The sudden growth of a fuzzy tail from her lower spine jolted her back to the fear response, however, and in full panic mode, she refused to look at herself until she had successfully made it back to her apartment. The sounds of helicopters in the sky convinced her to stay away from the rooftops
Lucario
and move
doesn't have
through the
sharp
side
teeth, though.
streets until she was back in her neighborhood. Along the way, a young girl who was walking with her mother recognized Lucario and pointed her out. "Mommy, look! It's Lucario!" The mother
That
took
voice
one look
sounded
at
so weird.
Lucario and screamed, prompting Lucario to run away from the family as rapidly as she could. She tried to deny what was happening, but also had the sense to not pass through the front desk area of her apartment building. For some reason, all she could think of was Spider-Man, and the many scenes from various movies in which Peter Parker or Miles Morales had to hide their powers and abilities.
First thought
In a
is
very Spider-Person-like
Spider-Man.
move, Lucario climbed in through the window. She didn't even have time to ponder how easy it had been to break into her own apartment before she took full stock of her situation. The transmutation into Lucario persisted and had even absorbed her onesie into her biomass while removing its synthetic properties. The change was, to put it mildly, less aesthetically seamless than she hoped. Her mouth was somewhere between a wolf muzzle and human lips and looked completely mangled from most angles. The blue tufts of fur that were Lucario's trademark were patchy and didn't fully cover her body. The bioluminescence that had alarmed the cops earlier was now randomly occurring on
Didn't
her
Lucario
body
only have
with
4
no
fingers?
rhyme or reason. She had never considered herself part of that
but
side
she's
of the
like
Pokemon fandom, but
Yeah, half
even
human,
by their
half Pokemon.
arcane yet discerning standards, her body had become hideous. Lucario wept, unable to imagine what she would do with herself. How would she tell her family, her friends, her boyfriend? Her life as a person was essentially over. And based on the attention the whole event had gotten from the police, it was most likely going to be followed by the law until her dying days. Down beneath the surface of the city, the third suspect, Garchomp, had been roaming through the subways and drawing a bit of attention. His movement through the tunnels had caused a great deal of collateral
is
damage
just a Garchomp.
as his
There's
claws
no
rend
mutation.
through
It's
concrete
just
and
Garchomp.
stone. When the blinding lights of an oncoming train shone on him, Garchomp found out exactly how fast he could move, though that may have been adrenaline. He had to make a quick escape from the train and wound up on a crowded subway terminal where many onlookers snapped pictures of the apparent shark monster. Garchomp scrambled to try and find a place to hide, but the platform had so many people that trying to get through them resulted in bloodshed. Garchomp's rough scales flensed the skin right off several passersby, and his dorsal growths on his limbs were sharper than an iron blade. People started throwing things and shooting small arms at the monster, but Garchomp's skin was impervious to such weapons.
Yeah, Garchomp
Even
does have
police
the
bullets
ability
earlier
rough
had
skin,
been
doesn't it?
unable to pierce through the scales, but there was a
Whenever you
cost to
hit it,
being
it
bulletproof. The weight of the scales forced Garchomp to crawl clumsily along the ground, only reinforcing its appearance of monstrosity in the eyes of the public. Garchomp could still feel the pain of the impacts, like hard slaps against his skin. He almost wanted to cry from the pain, but there were no tear ducts behind his eyes anymore. Somehow, at the same time, something snapped inside of Garchomp. He wanted the violence to stop and no longer cared how it did. And so, the transformed human went into a violent rampage that didn't recede even when the cops arrived.
Outrage.
During this violent massacre, Garchomp had dissociated from the situation and felt like he could see the Pokemon that his body had begun to imitate facing off against a horde of
Begun to
enemies.
imitate?
He came to picture the other people as wild Pokemon themselves, and from his out-of-body vantage point, he saw himself as a Pokemon trainer, commanding himself in monster-to-monster combat. Go, Garchomp! I choose you! You'll never lose to them! Mach Punch!
His Ash
Outrage!
impression.
Earthquake! Outside of the subway, there were tanks and other heavy-duty weapons ready to
won't
engage if
work.
Pokemon number 445 came to the surface. But unfortunately, it seemed to remain underground and in the presence of civilians. The only options remaining were to filter poisonous gas into the subway to knock the creature out, but there was still too much risk of innocent casualties. Though the cops did take down Garchomp with a rocket launcher, the incident was highly public, and the destruction caused in the firefight was unprecedented and brutal.
It took
Both
a rocket
Gengar and
launcher to knock
Lucario
him out.
learned about the incident themselves later that evening, and it only strengthened their resolve to stay hidden and avoid contact with the outside world. Over the next few days, an elaborate media cover-up managed to spin the incident as a bombing of Rockefeller Center, unrelated to the Pokemon event or franchise. This was partially due to a certain powerful foundation pulling strings to ensure that the publicity of this event would not be focused on the humanoid Pokemon. This shift in reporting was spurred along by the distribution of amnestic drugs throughout Manhattan. As for any blind spots, the biggest asset to the cover-up was that it happened in the Big Apple. Weirder things have and are assumed to have happened every day in the city that never sleeps. And the
That's
jaded
fair.
mindset of the denizens meant that all the rumors would fade away in a short while. But the threat of Pokemonification still loomed throughout the world. wherever the merchandise was freely circulated. Thus, in the modern day, a new war on Pokemon, a colder and more secretive war, was being fought through espionage and decisive operations. Though it might be infeasible to imagine that all memorabilia and products of the Pokemon Company could be seized by the authorities, the SCP Foundation has assigned much of its resources to scanning the existing stock for a catalytic component that results in the baleful transformation. This irreversible condition has been given the item designation of SCP-5254 and is considered part of the Keter object class. Of the 34 instances of SCP-5254 transformation that occurred following the incident in New York, only Pokemon 94, Gengar, and Pokemon number 448, Lucario, seemed to survive the day. Those that were neutralized through violence were also not the norm, as the vast majority of victims of SCP-5254 lost their lives during the process of the transformation itself. It's not hard to imagine the more humanoid and relatively human-sized Pokemon were a better fit for the continued life of the victim, as those who were changed into creatures with non-human body plans fared far less well on average. Pokemon with an insect-like or serpentine form showed a particularly low rate of survival among SCP-5254 instances, and this was also true for Pokemon that were more abstract in nature, such as many Pokemon based on inanimate objects. The SCP Foundation's official containment procedures when it comes to SCP-5254 is to terminate all instances, not only because of the irreversible harm and life-threatening condition inflicted on the victims, but due to the contagious nature of the SCP. As long as there is at least one human transformed by the effects of SCP-5254, there is an increased risk of other victims to experience their own transformation
It's basically like a parrot. It's basically like a disease.
SCP-5254 affected individuals, and the greater each individual's knowledge and affinity for the Pokemon
Cool
franchise
disease,
is,
although
the more
albeit
rapid the onset
horrible
and
disease.
severe the effects of the SCP-5254 transformation
So
are.
the more
Extensive testing performed with D-Class personnel has also shown without a doubt that official apparel from the Pokemon Company is where the start of SCP-5254 begins, and that the vast catalog of collectible fictional creatures is narrowed down to single choice by whatever creature the individual most closely resembles at the time of the transformation. The effects are slightly diminished or delayed if the article of official Pokemon clothing depicts multiple creatures, but there's no guarantee that the individual won't experience a change in pigmentation of the skin or the growth of animalistic features in keeping with the most prominently displayed Pokemon. The lethality of the transformation varies, but the alterations happen on a cellular and genetic level. Autopsies of SCP-5254 instances have shown that organs and bones might be entirely replaced by foreign organic material. Because very little of the original victim's body remains after a transmutation event, the extreme anomalous science involved in the creation of SCP-5254 remains beyond the SCP Foundation's ability to remedy or combat, even through the most extensive reconstructive surgeries. There is still an ongoing search for a person of interest who is known by the internet handle Sir Viper and believed to be the culprit behind SCP-5254.
You're really trying to lay on the fact that you're a Pokemon fan
there, employees of
sir.
the Pokemon Company have been archived from the Foundation, and it seems as though the Keter-class SCP was allowed to happen in an official capacity because the Pokemon Company provided Sir Viper with some official merchandise in exchange for the promise of Pokemon being brought to life. The stockholders seem to agree that a world where Pokemon were tangible, breathing beings was one where
Where
even
have I heard
greater
that
profits
before?
could be achieved, but the human toll and the reality of the product was anything but
I feel
what
like
they
I've heard that
expected.
exact, like...
One detail of the fictional world building in the Pokemon video games that is often overlooked, even by the creators themselves, is the adjacency between human beings and Pokemon when both exist within the same world. Though humans possess the power to build civilizations and cultivate ideals, Pokemon are equally powerful in the natural and spiritual worlds. They occupy a parallel existence that brings a cyclical balance to the world. While conventional science could never create a Pokemon, and the real world's evolutionary ecosystem could never produce one, Sir Viper is most likely someone who realized that the key ingredient needed to manifest real-life Pokemon is humanity itself. His experiments into human transmutation are founded on a philosophical basis rather than a literal one, focused on the inherent connection between Pokemon and people.
Hold
The world
on.
cannot have one without the other.
What's that
And in
dude's name from the
Viper's
movie?
eyes, the human lives sacrificed
I can't think
to
what his
bring
name was.
Pokemon
It was like
from the
Howard
fictional
or something
world
from the
into this
movie,
one
the Detective
were merely
Pikachu
a
movie.
redundancy. a mad
the
scientist with a
Detective
special
Pikachu
interest in
one?
Pokemon.
Yeah.
A worldwide
It was like
franchise
Howard or
with more
something.
robust marketing arms than Pokemon number 68,
It
Machamp.
is.
And the hapless runaway victims of transmutation who are still unwittingly spreading the anomaly.
Oh, it's gonna kill me
The
not knowing,
SCP
remembering what his
Foundation
name
must
is, but it's like
endeavor to gain
Howard or
control
something.
of all three if it wishes to bring an end to SCP-5254. Check out the Dr. Bob Patreon and become a junior researcher
Okay.
today. Now,
Okay, so this is literally him. He was using a gas to merge people in Pokemon, and then this dude was doing the exact same thing. Albeit not the exact same thing, but like similar.
Extremely similar.
Yeah, turning people into Pokemon by using a gas.
Yeah, that is extremely similar to it. So then the big question: which one would you want?
I don't know.
And let's assume that since we're nerds, let's assume.
Okay, so
it's
what I'm getting from
stated
this is that the
more you know.
transformation is based on what you most look like at the moment, and your knowledge of it is how much you transform.
Correct. So, for me, if I was wearing like a Charizard shirt,
You would
You know,
fully
like the-
transform.
that's with most Pokemon. For us,
Yeah.
so I'd probably be wearing a Charizard shirt or a. It's funny that the cosplayers that were cosplayed as humans didn't like slightly change their physical.
Yeah,
features
I know.
into
I
what
was about to
those
say
humans
that.
look
I was
like.
about to say that. Like, they didn't change at all.
And there was one guy who was a Charizard in the background. He didn't even do anything.
Yeah.
He just kind of sat there.
Remember, there were 34 instances, and we don't know them
Yes.
all.
Also, they said that Garchomp died. How did they kill it?
Rocket
It's a
launcher.
Garchomp.
No, they said it
No,
was
they said it
neutralized. They
survived the
didn't
rocket
say
launcher.
it died.
They said that the only two that survived were the other two.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know how they neutralized it with a rocket launcher, but it wasn't dead.
Yeah.
They said they managed to knock it out.
Anyway, I got
With a
another
rocket
SCP animation.
SCP animation?
Mm-hmm.
What is it?
One of the
it
stupidest
about me?
SCPs.
Is it about me?
Hello, I
what?
am SCP
it about me?
426,
No.
but I'll probably be more familiar to you
Not
as a
about me. I
toaster.
thought
I am a
me was pretty
retro-style
interesting.
4-slice
Oh, no, it's not that
1750-watt toaster, able to toast
It
bread
is
when
about
supplied
me.
with
I told
power.
you it was about
This
me.
isn't often mentioned, but I also have a
Oh.
defrost and reheat settings. When I was first sold, I had a 2-year warranty, and my prior owners did not live.
Because
Hello,
remember what it does.
I am SCP-426,
What-
but I'll
yeah, what
probably
I do
be
is
more familiar
really
to
simple.
you
Yeah.
as a toaster. I am a retro-style 4-slice 1750-watt toaster, able to toast bread when supplied with power. This isn't often mentioned, but I also have a defrost and reheat settings. When I was
Hey, at
first
least
sold,
it's got-
I had a
at
2-year
least I have
warranty,
those.
and my prior owners did
Yeah,
not live
I'm
to
pretty
see
impressive.
the end of it. You're probably wondering,
Especially considering
why
how
am I
old
being
I am.
spoken to by a toaster right now? Believe me, I'd rather do this any other way, but such a thing is not physically possible with me. Whenever you talk about me or write about me or even think about me, you'll find yourself suddenly shifting to the first person. For example, I am you and you are me. Do you understand? Don't worry if it's confusing. Everyone gets it eventually, whether they want to or not. Perhaps you're thinking, I cannot relate to a toaster for I am not a toaster. But spending time around me will quickly cause you to change your mind. Little by little, you will begin to see yourself in me. You will feel a phantom wire running out of yourself.
Hey,
You will
Mama.
sense the 4 crevices, hungry for cold slices of bread to toast. As
hungry
time
for
goes on, you will begin to feel the urge to emulate my functions. You will desire bread to toast. You will desire delicious power running through your veins, skin like chrome and muscles like circuit boards. I am a toaster. You are a toaster. All it takes is 2 months for the effects to truly take hold. People rarely pay attention to their toaster. They don't realize what's happening until
And I'm
it's
back.
too late.
So-
I can be an insidious little toaster like that. My last
Huh.
family were the
I did not know that
Sanders
about
brothers
them.
I'm pretty
before the
confusing.
SCP Foundation took me in and gave me a
I
new
did not know
home.
that about me.
Mr. and Mrs. Sanderson were a
I did not
newly
know that
married
about me
couple,
either.
and I first came into their life as a wedding gift from a family friend of theirs. This friend can't be blamed for what happened next. He had no idea he was killing them. Like a lot of young couples, they were still saving up money to start renting their own place, so they were living with Mr. Sanderson's parents. They all got a lot of use out of me during the first month, before their minds started to change. They enjoyed a lot of toast during that period. Then, of course, the 2-month honeymoon period ended. They had become me, and I had become them. It wasn't long before 3 of them were dead. Such a shame. The younger Mrs. Sanderson, the blushing bride, was the first to go. Because of my anomalous effects, she felt the need to connect herself to a power supply in order
Oh,
to make
no!
some toast of her own. In order to achieve this, she chewed through a power outlet in a wall before switching it on, causing a massive surge of electricity to pass through her body and kill her. Her body caught fire shortly afterwards. Next was the elder Mrs. Sanderson. In much the same manner that her new daughter-in-law sought a source of electricity, she felt the need to integrate bread into her body. Interesting fact, the maximum capacity of the human stomach is considered to be
okay, I
between
was
8
going
to
the wrong
9
way.
kilograms. The elder Mrs.
What were you
Sanderson
thinking?
consumed 10 kilograms of raw bread, causing her stomach to rupture and inducing a painful death as a result. The younger Mr. Sanderson was the next to perish. He did something with me that I would rather not mention.
Oh my
and
god!
The SCP Foundation thought best to redact.
He did what?
Suffice to say, the younger Mr. Sanderson did not survive the experience, dying of severe blood loss.
Oh!
Police and fire crews
God!
arrived at the home after the body of the younger
Oh,
Mrs.
that's
Sanderson
painful!
was
Does not
returned to the home.
approve.
Luckily,
Zygo does
the
not
elder
approve.
Mr. Sanderson was found alive, though severely malnourished. When asked by police why he hadn't eaten in several days, he answered that he had inserted some bread a week prior, but was still waiting for the toast to come out. When I was extracted from the house, the police noticed my unusual
God.
properties immediately. They too were unable to refer to me in the third person. This anomalous detail quickly found its way to a
So it's
foundation
not-
mole buried in their precinct. And the
Okay,
SCP
so
Foundation
just talk
soon
about the
descended and
toaster in
collected
first
me
person.
From the evidence locker.
Not everything
The
else in the
story
first
of the
person.
strange
Okay.
deaths in the Sanderson home were kept
Yeah,
out of
talk about me in
papers
first
and
person.
suppressed.
Yes,
and all
ma'am, I'll be-
involved in the incident directly were given Class C amnestics. The SCP Foundation is a curious bunch. They love to spend valuable toast-making time performing experiments and gathering data, and they saw fit to perform several experiments on me when I came under their care. For experiment 426-1, a member of D-Class
Sausage fingers.
personnel designated D/426/1 was asked to stand outside my containment chamber. Crucially, he was not informed about my identity or any of my anomalous properties. He wasn't even allowed to establish visual contact with me. He was then asked by the attending researcher to describe what he thought might be inside my chamber. He replied with, "Probably some huge monster holed up in there. That's what you guys have all over the place, right?" The D-Class did not even seem to realize that he was speaking about me in the first person. These observations were documented, and I was prepared for further experimentation. The next experiment was 426-2. I found this test to be considerably more interesting. A D-Class subject was brought into my containment chamber, with several cameras fixed onto his position. However, the SCP Foundation took pains to make sure that I was permanently out of the view of the cameras. I was also bolted to the ground of the test chamber to prevent the D-Class subject from pulling me into the view of the cameras at any point during the experiment. The objective here was simple. The Foundation wished to better understand the secondary effects of my anomalous abilities on the human mind. The D-Class was subjected to a period of prolonged isolation, with meals given regularly through a serving hatch. Communication with this D-Class was prohibited throughout the duration of the study. Over time, it was clear that the isolation of being in a cell with me was beginning to take a toll on the subject's mental health.
He's going insane
Due to
because
my lack
he's
of
stuck in a
brain,
room with me.
lungs, and a tongue, I
room?
am somewhat lacking
I was in a room
as a
once.
conversationalist.
That was
He
insane.
spent the first few days loudly vocalizing his complaints and banging his hands.
He went
up
crazy
against the
because he
walls
got
of the
stuck in a room with
containment
me.
chamber,
Crazy.
begging
Crazy?
Must be the
I was
ones.
crazy
in the
once.
room.
They put me in a room,
I
a
felt
rubber
that
room,
this
a
was
rubber room.
Mute you if you don't
somewhat
shut up.
unreasonable
Crazy.
on his part. There are far worse anomalies in Foundation containment that he could have been locked up with. Compared to, say,
682, I'm gonna look up what that
SCP-106,
is
I
later.
am incredibly reasonable. Not to mention the fact I make far better toast than he does. After the initial period of distress, the D-Class became resigned to his situation and fell into a morose silence. He would occasionally mutter to himself in what appeared to be a state of fear and self-pity.
Yeah, that's not
It took
enough.
almost 45 days for him to fully manifest.
Oh,
the
it's that
secondary
SCP. It's
effect
the
of my
big old
anomalous
lizard
state.
one.
2 weeks sooner than it typically takes for subjects to begin believing that they, like me, are toasters. SCP Foundation scientists believed that the effects were hastened by the isolation, which lowered the D-Class's mental defenses against my secondary effects. When the effects finally took hold, the subject wrapped one of his arms around me and pulled me into his embrace. He began whispering to me, saying that we were brothers.
Why is he whispering to
It was
me?
clear by this point that his mind was in a state of disrepair. It is also worth noting that he did not deviate
quite
from referring to
uncomfortable
me
with
in
how
the
he's
first
talking to
person
me.
at any point during this process. 1 hour after finally cracking and giving in to my secondary effect, he was removed
Hey,
from
I
the
gotta go,
containment.
so I'm gonna end the video and I'll upload it tonight.
Alright.
Dude, that one dude who died. Oh my gosh. Anyway,
I'm
gonna end it here. Yeah, the third guy. Anyway, I'm gonna end it here. So, yeah. All right. See you later.
Don't forget to take a picture for the
Yes. Yeah, we gotta do that. All right. See ya.